And so when we can combine these different 5 elements, your customers are going to be more likely to remember them with more significance. Hi, I'm Russ.
And I'm Danny.
And this is the Memory Makers Podcast,
the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories.
Danny, no need for a jingle today because it's our 100th episode. And if I can get the confetti with my sweaty hands. Whoa!
Oh, there it is.
I went and set that off in the wrong
Got
direction.
confetti everywhere.
Mike,
For those who are audio only, we just blew up some confetti.
Mike, I pointed it in the wrong direction and I didn't get it on the drop cloth. So literally the 90... Mike, I failed you on that one. It's hardly... There's 6 stars on the damn drop cloth. I'm going to help you clean that up. Oh, golly. Woo! Happy 100th.
Happy 100th. It's... I was reflecting very recently that it's wild that we're already at 100.
It's gone so fast, and I was talking to Bart Berger from Cubica Foundations just this last week, and really enjoyed, kind of chatting with him of what we see for the episode, but also just how much we've enjoyed and learned of ourselves just doing it, and from the operators and from our partners. And so it's a good time to celebrate and throw confetti. And Mike, again, my apologies, because that was a flagrant error on the direction. But anywho,
I will give, before you intro the topic for the episode, I will give a shout out to last week's episode, which was a solo one that I did. But I think that our podcast is such a good example of what I talked about last week of progress over perfection.
Yes.
Just take action and learn from that every single day instead of trying to make something perfect right from the beginning. Because if you try to make it perfect from the beginning, you're going to delay and overthink and do all the things except take action. And we took action, and 2 years later, we're at episode 100, and we've learned a lot along the way.
Absolutely. And with that, knowing that this is the Memory Makers Podcast, we thought, hey, let's focus on why and how we can make things more memorable. Specifically, what are the characteristics or the kind of core elements that we need to hone in on when we're looking to elevate an experience from good to great and make it memorable so it stands out in the customer's minds in such a positive way because of how they come to celebrate and escape with us. So we're going to be diving into that today, and also in celebration of the 100th episode, we want you guys to stick around until the end because we're going to have a cool challenge that we're going to be issuing out for all of our listeners and viewers, and that way then you will be able to get a little bit of extra razzle-dazzle as well. I don't think we're going to be sending out the confetti bombs, but stay tuned because we're going to dive into that shortly. So, so Danny, I'm going to kick it over to you and have you start with what is the first pillar that we need to identify that makes a memorable experience.
Yeah, so we have 5 characteristics that we're going to talk about today. Number 1, strong emotions. And for anyone who's been in our industry for any period of time, this won't be a surprise. The experiences that create strong emotions are much more likely to stick in a person's memory. Now, the specific emotion they feel isn't necessarily as important as how strong it is, because that emotion could be excitement or joy or surprise or nostalgia or even fear for people riding roller coasters. There's a lot of different emotions, and the bigger the emotion is, the stronger it's attached to a memory. And so for each of these that we're going to talk about, each of these characteristics, we're also going to give examples of how this can show up in a family entertainment center or a location-based entertainment venue. And so a couple examples of how strong emotions, and you can leverage that in your own business. 1, create high energy moments. There's a lot of really high energy attractions that are out there. Things like go-karts or indoor roller coasters, or it was Malibu Jacks that just opened recently in Texas, and they have a drop tower that's outside. Things like that, really high energy. Or even attractions that have been around for a while, like a laser tag. One of the things that we added to the briefing investing experience is a laser tag launch room, which kind of creates this almost Disney-like story immersive experience, giant TVs and speakers and effects, and it's really intense experience to start it with a bit of a bang. So idea number 2, create heartwarming interactions, right? That's another way to increase the emotion that guests feel. And one way to do that, and this is something that Russ and I, when we worked at the laser tag facility where we started our career way back in high school, that we would do, we had a lot of employees that worked there that were part of show choir, that were used to singing and being on stage. And if we had multiple of those employees working at the same time, we would gather a few of them together and have them do kind of like a barbershop quartet style a cappella version of Happy Birthday with harmonies, and in a way that was just way better than a group of 20 people just off key singing Happy Birthday. But the feelings of the parents that they would get, their hearts would melt to be able to see that for their kid. Which is such an amazing way to do that as well. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do when it comes to being able to create really high impact emotions and memorable experiences.
And so much of that is rooted in the fact that it's unexpected, right? And so some of those high emotional moments, like, hey, we may be on a drop tower and we know that we're going to drop, but we don't know exactly when that's going to be. And so that's the surprise portion that can trigger some of that for us. But our brain is constantly on, surveying for, the flight or fight, type of responses and looking for things that are new and unexpected. And that just comes from that reptilian part of our brain of survival. But now we're always on the lookout, right? When we're saying like, ooh, what's catching my eye? And the things that stand out are the things that are different. And so when we're looking at, how to break a routine or an expectation, getting tagged by the brain as, oh my gosh, I have not seen this before. I have not experienced this before in this way. Your brain is going to lock that in and catalog that. And so that's another great way to solidify that as the memory through novelty and surprise. And unlike with the high emotions thing, we don't always have to make them huge. We don't have to have a drop tower, kind of moment, but we can create a variety of things, small surprises throughout the experience that can translate really well. So, for example, when you have a birthday party, right? And you're looking at creating an extra birthday party benefit that only that kid gets to do, that's not shown in your marketing materials, right? It's a little bit of something that you just are adding on. So when mom's booked that party, she's not necessarily seeing, hey, there's this special moment that we do for your child. And so it could also be extra treats like a dessert or a special t-shirt or an extra game card or some of those things that are just not listed in the standard bullet points and things, because mom already has an idea of what that landscape is going to look like, and bam, now it's as much for her as it is for the guest of honor, as Frank Price likes to call them. And so it's the other piece that you can do that I've seen, work really, really well is that secret menu item. So if you have something that's, off menu, right? Whether that's a special, soda drink with sparklers that are coming out of it, or you have a really popular thing that you can, or that your kitchen does really well, that's a new take on an ice cream sundae or what have you, look at something that they can't get unless they are doing it, through one of those special bookings for an event and commemorating it. So looking for those small little things that can go a long way. And sometimes it can just be extra things that your staff does when they see, how are you calling out your guest of honor or somebody that's doing a group event? How are you highlighting the fact that they're doing a group event so that way your staff can engage and give them a little bit of extra pizzazz? And some of those things can even be tailored into like a laser tag experience. For example, hey, Zone did this for forever where they would play Happy Birthday on the pack when you would put it on. And you can do extra light shows and extra power-ups and things that you get only if you're the birthday kid. And so there's cool stuff like that of let's look at the knobs and the levers. What features do we have available that we can use in a new way and in a specific moment that's really going to drive that home and really put the spotlight on the guests that we value so much.
So the number 3 of these characteristics is meaning and personal relevance. And so when an experience is tied to a guest's identity or a tradition or a personal story, it becomes much more powerful in their mind and in their memory. And so two ideas that come to mind here. First, some of these literally being able to lift them straight from my experience working at Disney. And I don't know if they still do this, but at the time that I worked there, they had pins. When you went into any of the Disney parks, you could get a pin to put on your shirt to commemorate. Maybe it was someone's first visit, or maybe it was a honeymoon, or maybe it was an anniversary, or anything like that. They had a lot of different versions of these pins that you could get at the guest services right when you walked in. And the cool part about that is if there's a guest walking around Disney World and they were wearing, hey, this is my first visit to Disney pin, the amount of cast members, employees, but they were called cast members at Disney, that would go out of their way to welcome those guests, to give them high fives for the kids or whatever it was, makes an enormous difference, because that helps, one, the person have a really special experience, because so many cast members are going out of their way to say, welcome, so glad you're here, high five, did you try this attraction yet, have you gone over here, just making it really special. But it's a way for them to also have an identity tied to that, and it's something they get to take home with them. And so when they get home in the future, they can look at that pin, and every time that they see that, they remember their first trip there. And so you can do similar things like that within your venue. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pin, because those are maybe a bit more expensive to make. It could be things like stickers. I know those don't stick around as long, and it's not going to be something they hold on to, but there are little ways to just personalize those experiences. And it could be about a first visit or a birthday or an anniversary, or heck, even date night. Right. I know that my wife and I go bowling every single week. And if we were at the venue and they had stickers for date night, I'd throw one on. That'd be cool. Right. Yeah. It's just a different way to do that. Another piece to commemorate the experience and be able to tie a stronger memory to it is to provide souvenirs. Right. And this can be as simple as having a photo booth in the arcade. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that my wife and I do is we made an agreement with each other. If we're ever somewhere new, doesn't matter if it's an FEC or anything else, if we're somewhere new we haven't been and they have a photo booth, we will get pictures in the photo booth every time. And then we have a cork board in our house where we're sticking every single one of those up, and we can look at that and know, oh yeah, remember the visit here, and oh, that was really fun when we went there. So that is a small, basic way to do it, but you could also offer something as elaborate as a higher end add-on souvenir to a group or party package, right? The key is to have, if you're going to have a souvenir that people take home, have something that people actually want and not just a random tchotchke with your logo that they might throw away. Make it a bit more meaningful, especially if it's going to be something that is a higher end add-on item to larger group packages. That's something that you want to make it high value so that they want to hold on to it. But those are a couple ways to help someone personalize their experience and attach a memory to a physical thing.
Well, and you touched on it briefly there with the corkboard and the photo booth, right? Of, okay, anytime that we're there and we're going to get this picture taken, we're going to go and do that, and we're going to put it there. Because when you guys look at it, you go, oh my gosh, remember when we did this? And it's just that nice reminder, and it helps bring it to the forefront. So much of that comes from when we're celebrating or escaping with the people that we care about. And so knowing that it's not just what you were doing, but who you're doing it with, that adds such a special layer of that to it. I think it's one of those, well, one, they're going to remember more of things that they're actively doing. And so if you can find ways to capture what's happening in the moment of that happening, as opposed to, a photo step and repeat photo op kind of a thing is neat at the end of the day, but also where are we thinking of good opportunities to take a picture candidly of guests that come through. So I think of something like Lucky Strike, the location in their Bellevue, Washington location. Literally would have a photographer paid to come in on the weekends and just take hundreds of photos of guests all throughout, and they were getting random things, random pictures, and they were notified, hey, we're going to take pictures. We make them available online, so that way you can log in and tag yourself and download those from our Facebook page and our social media. And so finding ways to really get those authentic moments captured with guests, doing things with with the group that they're there with is massively impactful, in my opinion. And I think that when they're participants and not just spectators, that's all the more, right? Because like Tiff and I just went to Chicago. We did the Field Museum. We were with my sisters and my nieces and nephews. And half the time, Tiff is always the one taking the pictures because I'm running around with my ADD nonsense happening. And so, but halfway through the trip, Tiff and I made sure that we were taking pictures of, my sister Meg and her 2 kids and my sister Lindsay and her 2 kids, because that way we could get their entire family group together there candidly. And those weren't things where it was just the step and repeat of, okay, here we are here we are there. It was reminding them actively of what they were doing in that moment. And those candid, photos just go such a long way. So if you haven't, or if you have a staff member who's really good at photography or wanting to get better at photography, having them do some laps and taking photos, throughout, and then telling people about it so they can come and get their photos, that's an awesome way to be able to do something like that. And I think that when you look at the social competition is obviously the buzzword of the day, right? And it's because people are coming together and they love to trash talk, and it's just kind of how we're wired. But Danny, you had this idea of what's the social cooperation? Where and how can we look to get people out from just the spectator mode and into an experience a little bit more, to find some more of those active engagement and candid moments to be able to do it? And so you can do, competition is fun, don't get me wrong, but when you look at something like escape rooms, it's got much more cooperation than it does competition into it, which was why it's, blown up over the years to be such an impactful experience, because, hey, we're coming together and we're working together. And when guests are coming out of that, we're always hearing them say things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I couldn't find that piece. You found the hidden key card underneath the end table there. Like, I never would have gotten that without you. Looking for that, where yes, the competition is coming of, hey, we're trying to get a really good time to beat the other groups that are there, but how do we foster competition between some of those groups to bring our individual nodes of guests together the way that they're doing that? And so it's things like that where, okay, how do we find more active participation for spectators and keep them involved if they're going to be a little hands off? Or what activities are we putting into our mix that have that high social component where they are actively doing it together? And are all of them just head-to-head competitions, or some of them group competitions where we're really trying to get them to work together at a higher level?
Before I hit the 5th characteristic, let me just recap the first 4 to bring everyone back up to speed again and where we're at. So we started with strong emotions. Then we talked about novelty and surprise. Then we talked about meaning and personal relevance. Then participation with people we care about. And then finally is number 5, end on a high note. Because people will judge experiences based on 2 main things: the most intense moment, also known as the peak, and the end. Now, we already talked about intense moments with the very first characteristic of high emotion. But this is the kind of finish of an experience. It's the final goodbye moment. And we want to be able to train our staff to deliver really excellent final interactions. So this is something that gets talked about quite a bit, and I think it's worth repeating here, is how to do this in your FEC. Number 1, don't neglect your redemption counter. Mm-hmm. This is often the final stop for a family before they leave your facility. And if they've had a great experience up to that point, but they have a horrible experience at the counter because the kids are indecisive, or they don't have enough points to get the thing they want, or whatever it is, and everyone's stressed, it's not a fun experience. And then they'll look back on their trip to your venue and they'll judge so much of it based upon how it ended. And it can be really easy to take your B players or C player staff members and say, I'm just going to throw them on a redemption counter because I want my A players in these other areas. Well, you're setting yourself up for failure there, because you're putting your less than ideal employees in a position to deliver that final experience. And so it's important to remember to take your A players, put them at the redemption counter, put them in the redemption store, whatever model that you have, and give them the freedom to make it fun and engage with kids and help them make fast decisions and all that kind of stuff in order to move it along. Because the faster that experience happens, the happier parents are going to be. And then the other idea here is go beyond the transaction itself. When someone settles their bill, it can be easy to just say, well, that's a transaction. I take their credit card and then there you go. Have a great day. But we can make it more than a transaction, right? We can give somebody a thank you gift every time that they're coming to the counter to close out their bill at the end of their visit. And it can be a discount or a free value on a return trip, and have employees at the door saying goodbye as people exit and giving them high fives as they walk out the door, things like that. Literally hold the door open for them as they leave. And people might think, oh my gosh, why would I pay someone to stand there and open and close the door for people? That's a lot in labor. It is. But I look at somebody like Andretti Indoor Karting and Games, and that's something that they started doing during COVID times when they didn't want the customers to have to touch doors if they didn't have to. So they had employees opening the door for every person walking in and every person walking out. But they kept that person far after COVID ended because they realized the value that it brings when I'm walking up to a business and there's an employee that just opens the door for me, or if I finished my experience and I'm walking out and they open the door for me and thank me for coming and give me a high five or whatever it is, that makes the experience end on a bit of a higher note.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just at Pinhead's last week, and they have done that similar thing where they're opening and closing the doors for folks and sending those groups off after they've spent that money and are so excited and everything. But to get a huge farewell send off from those folks as they're exiting was great, and they were on it. They were those staff members were looking to make eye contact and thank them genuinely for coming in and sending them off with a big huzzah and making sure that last moment before they, are fiddling for their car keys was fabulous from start to finish. And so it makes such a big difference of just helping your guests feel seen and heard beyond the transaction, like what you were talking about. And all of this comes back to, guys, like this industry is memories and fun. That's the business that we were in. And so when we can combine these different 5 elements, your customers are going to be more likely to remember them with more significance and easier recall because we're, using the brain and the psychology of how we think and operate to create novelty and surprise, highlighting how they're doing this with people that they care about, looking for those peak emotional states that we can replicate in a variety of different ways throughout all of it. It all has a huge impact. And especially when we start stacking those together and then we're doing it consistently as guests are coming through, that's what's going to make the difference. And if it's a coin toss between, we could try this thing out or we could go here, it's, let's go there because when we've gone there, they did X, Y, Z. Like that is currency that is bringing repeat traffic back into your center and keeping you at the forefront when there's so many different things that people have competing for their time and attention. So, with that, we just want to thank all of you so much from the standpoint of, whether you've just started listening to some of these episodes or you've been on, from day one and have been listening to Danny and I, have a learning platform and an open way for us to be able to grow and be better. Hopefully this gives you opportunities to do that. And with it being our 100th episode, we want to challenge you guys to create 100 memories in 100 days. And so where and how can you find small ways to go above and beyond and surprise or wow a customer, and keeping a track of that where, hey, in this one day we may get 27 because we were, really on it or we were able to do this. But create yourself a little sticker chart and let's look at how we can create that 100 memories in 100 days, because that's going to then also give you a chance to challenge your staff to come up with new ways and experiment and gamify what this can be, to find some hidden gold that you have with your team members and really let them express their talents in different ways. Danny, like you were mentioning of, hey, do we have singers and show choir folks and things like that? Awesome. Or we have someone who's really great at photography that we want to be able to have them be able to kind of open up and find these candid moments. There are tons of different ways that your staff is going to lean into this and have a lot of fun with it. And we can incentivize it, beyond that to the point where we're conditioning the behavior of our staff to be always on the hunt of what are these little moments and how can I start to inject those into the experiences of the guests, as opposed to just the normal, like, hi, thanks for coming today, welcome, taking it beyond where others aren't doing that for you. And if everyone listens to this podcast and makes this a priority, I'm just excited to hear back from you guys as you go into the challenge, because that compounds, right? We have with the hundreds of memories from each listener's location, and stacking that up, just the compound effect that we start to get over time by doing it more and more and doing it consistently is going to be really, really special, which is what we're here to do. So with that, Danny, I think that's a great place for us to wrap up.
I agree.
Perfect. So we've got more awesome content coming your guys' way through the weekly episodes, so be sure to come back and check it out. Also, if you are doing the 100 Memories in 100 Days challenge, let us know how it's going for you. We want to hear from you and see, what are your favorites that your staff has come up with and all of that. So
if you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
As well as that 5 stars, please and thank you.
The 5 and stars. We want 5 and we want stars. We want both.
Both. Please and thank you.
If you've got ideas for future episodes, either topics or guests that you want to see, follow us on social media. Send us a DM.
Big shout out to Mikey Mike for getting me a confetti bomb and running the alternate 1s and 2s. I'm looking forward to cleaning up this celebration with you here shortly. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you so much for allowing us to be here and celebrate this 100th episode, and we'll catch you on the next one, troublemakers.